Yeah, I just hit record. So it's Noel. You just made the point that in BC they need 6 days, but in New Brunswick, quick, they had that done. Do you think why do you think that? Like, why do you think they were able to do that so easily?
Well, I think the biggest question is why is now Nova Scotia said that we're going to a provincial election? You know, like why all of a sudden is everybody jumping on the bandwagon? Is it to get ahead of the game, or are they fearing that they don't want to be, punching from the corner? I don't know.
Well, so I think they're probably gonna. They can't just give it. They can't just. We're already recording, by the way. They can't just give it to Kamala. They can't just give it to Kamala.
Well, they can't let her. They can't make her work for it because she doesn't know how to work.
Well, that's true. That is absolutely true. But they can't. If they give it to her, people are going to be upset about that kind of stuff, right? And if they instead just lock the country into we're not sure who won for months and months and months and months. I saw a tweet the other day yesterday saying like, I don't care, I don't care if they steal it or whatever. I just want it to be over with, and move on with this type deal. And it's like, that's the mental state they want to get you in. They want to get you into a situation where you've been just in limbo for so long that like, that's the process is the punishment. And then they've got you where you're just like, please just tell us the bad news that you've stolen the election and, then let us get on with it,
Yeah, but with the process as the punishment, they also believe the sentence is the cure.
Yeah. Indeed.
I just got a temporary job filling out ballots, actually, in my spare time.
Congratulations. Did you have to apply for that, or were they just recruiting?
It's a little bit different because actually I got hired by the Iranians to write in Putin.
Of course.
Well, at least you can do it from the comfort of your own home or a hotel room. Now knowing that you can take that ballot box wherever you go,
home.
Why not?
To the restaurant on the way home.
Well, I have to fill up the ballot box in a certain time period. Otherwise, they email me an electric shock.
Yes. I hope so. I mean, eventually they'll just implement it, like it'll be a subterranean or a whatever your skin is.
Dermal.
Yeah, thank you. Subdermal thing, and they'll just they'll send it to your phone, and your phone will shock you, and you're like, oh man. But I'm so addicted to this Candy Crush, right? And you won't get rid of the phone because you're like, the shock's worth it anyway. It's okay.
Yeah, now all they can do is blow a hole in your breast pocket.
Right. For now. Well, I've seen they can blow off fingers too. I've seen like the pagers and other phones that got exploded. And I don't know if it was fake. It could have been fake. But I try not to see gory things. Like I don't like gory things or anything like that. But as I was scrolling, I saw, and you know how sometimes your eyes just like focus on the worst part of whatever's on the screen. You're like, no, I didn't want to see any of that. But it was a guy who had his hand or his fingers blown off because I guess he was doing something, or he's holding his phone and his index finger and his these two fingers were blown off, and I was like,
well, and see, so even when you're on speakerphone, you hold the phone like this, right? So you're gonna have to like get a selfie stick and put yourself on speakerphone. So
hello,
and wear your safety glasses for heaven's sake.
For real, you're not wrong. But I mean, I don't think there's anybody, including me, who's changed their behavior after watching all of that, after seeing all the things, all the crazy shit that they can do. Like, honestly, genuinely, they even said, like, maybe this was a bad idea, but yeah, we definitely blew up those pagers. Like, that was us, right? And like, now we know that they can blow up these pagers to the degree of, again, I'm not sure, but it makes sense if you're holding something and it explodes that it might blow off your fingers. So, and I still haven't, like, I'm not wearing safety goggles and I've got a phone over here, right? Like, it's like, I don't know. I'm trusting the technology quite a lot more than maybe I should or whatever. But anyway, welcome everybody. We got in here and we started talking about BC, and Noel was upset about BC and the fact that Nova Scotia is going into an election now just after BC's hair of their teeth loss into an NDP majority. And
it's just a registered steal.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly. But everything, like, that's not new, is the unfortunate thing.
Well, as Stalin said, right? 2 counts the votes, baby. Not who makes them.
You're not wrong. And right now, the NDP seems to be counting. and all of the people who
Oh,
are supporting the
you know.
NDP seems to be counting. Yeah. And well, like there's another announcement. They're going to be coming out with another announcement today at 1 o'clock. And the announcement they came out with yesterday. So when the initial BC election was closed, they said approximately 45,000 ballots to count. Right. And then it was 65,000 and then it was 66,000. So I'm very interested to see how it all breaks down, because there's a whole bunch of there's a whole bunch of people who are saying like, oh, well, Restad, this is historic, and he shouldn't have won as many seats as he did, and all the rest. But it looks like to me a conservative route that got stolen by counting machines, right? Like it looks like an absolute landslide win for Restad got wiped out by faulty calculators and by shenanigans that we should not allow. And it's up to BC to say we reject this. We're not going to accept this. Like, and I don't know how that looks from any kind of position. You know what I mean?
It looks like a bunch of people not doing anything, because that's what they're going to do.
I know, but that's what I mean. Like in order for this to not work, people in BC are going to have to say no. And they don't know how to say no, because like, who do you say no to? Do you call up your city council and you're like, no, right? Like, no, we're not going to. And like, do you call Restad himself and say like, we're not going to accept this? And he says, well, I'm not going to accept this.
That'd be a good start though, wouldn't it?
It would be.
If every conservative got up on their hind legs for a change in BC, because it does that. BC goes conservative or sort of conservative under Krusty Clark, and then to full-blown communist.
Okay.
They do conservative communist, And I blame the people on the island. I blame the people on the coast. The people in the interior of BC are hillbillies, so they're damn well they're not going to vote Dipper. But they need to do that. They need to get up and phone Restad's office and just say enough. We're not complying with EB's edicts anymore.
How do you not comply with EB's edicts? So like, say he
You just stand up and do what the left does.
Okay,
but
but
burn cities to the ground and let the shit fall where it may. Like. We have to start doing what they've been doing successfully for decades.
Fight fire with fire?
Damn right. At this point, like, I mean,
but they have
BC is
power.
lost. Don't allow people from BC to populate your towns. Say, no, sorry, you can't come in here because you bring your poison with you. Stuff like that. I mean, you might not mean it, but put them on notice. The old "don't California my Texas" or this or that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need to start just standing up to these people and saying, no, every time you guys move someplace, you poison. You people
Look at
fix
Texas.
your own damn problems.
Bill's right.
Refugees.
So we need a lot of people, not just a few people. You need a lot of people.
But that's
Yes.
I agree. I agree with you guys that this is what is that's what we need to do. And Canadians don't like confrontation. Like, I've seen Canadians wear masks for years to avoid a confrontation. Even like something simple like going to the grocery store. You had
You're
to
still doing it.
I know, but you had to talk yourself into it. You know what I mean? Like, you had to talk yourself into. And Canadians hate confrontation to the degree where they will avoid it. Even
Well, some Canadians hate confrontation.
some
I'm getting
Canadians.
more and more that I'm welcoming it. When the wrong person gets in my face, I'm right back at it.
No, I know,
I'm not polite anymore.
but it's the middle masses. It's the people who really don't like confrontation. You know what I mean? It's the people who think to themselves, am I in fighting shape? And they look in the mirror and think to themselves, if I'm honest, no, right? Like, these people don't want confrontation for good reason, because they don't feel armed. They don't feel ready to defend their position. Right. And so like,
This is
That's-
the biggest weapon that you can
I
possibly
know.
have.
I
Like I said, teaching martial arts for years and years and owning guns and this and that. This and this
yeah.
is what
Yep.
makes it.
For sure.
Like-
But that's what I mean. We've been demoralized to the point where if you call up a school and say, how come there's no Thanksgiving crafts? Can you tell me how many Thanksgiving crafts are going on in the school? And they give you some bullshit nonsense, 3.5 pages. And then you're like, wait a second, can you actually tell me like what's going on? And they say, no, not really. And then like, I don't have anything I can do other than legal, right? Or pull my kid. Right. So it's like you get to the end of this thing and you don't have a solution. It's at that point that we need to say no. It's at that point where they're like, well, I don't have anything else, that you need to say no. And like the question is, how do we do it in an effective way? And I mean, like, I hear what you're saying. Do you think the left is effective in, but do you think
To a
the
certain
left is,
degree.
do
I mean,
you think the
they've
left, hold on,
instituted,
let me get my question out. Hold on, please.
Okay.
Do you think the left is effective using chop zones, using like the peaceful protests, like we're going to burn down the post office, we're going to, you know, all of these peaceful protests that were obviously like arson and not peaceful, is, to me, that turns off regular people. That turns off people for support, right? Like you've got the really rabid, crazy students who are like, yes, this is what we need to do to get rid of the bad capitalists, but they're not representative of the mushy middle that I'm really talking about. And I don't think that resonates. And I'm trying to figure out a way to talk to those people. I'm trying to figure out a way to get those people to stand up and say no, because that's how.
There's no talking to those
no,
people.
There's
They're
nothing you
already
can do.
fully indoctrinated. They're already either bought and paid for. They're so full of their own BS that there's no pulling them back. And that's what you got to start with, is attacks on them. And I mean, I'm not advocating violence and this and that. It might sound like it, but we need to get in their faces. We need to stop that. We need to reach out. All this Palestinian protest crap.
So
Like,
one of the things that I heard was basically that the group of people who want to be on the right side, but basically it's the people who don't want to cross the crowd. Like if the crowd says, you know, we're going to do this, and you say, hold on a second, I don't think that's very good, that makes you an outlier. So if the crowd says we're going to do this, you're like, I'm going to do this. So if the crowd is moving from one person, Hillary Clinton, Democrats, to another person, that's how this works, right? Basically, like that mushy middle that I'm talking about, you have to just be a powerful leader. You just have to go and say the right things and get heard by enough people, and the mushy middle crowd will follow you. And then do you think that the mushy middle crowd is being emboldened by Donald Trump? Do you think that they're standing up and saying no because he's standing up and saying no? Like,
to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Because now they have somebody that they feel will protect them
That
to a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it boils down to. That's why people accept policing or accept a standing army instead of having a militia that's ready to fight when a war breaks out. Right. We take all this stuff so we can be nice and warm in our houses. And I'm just as guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would stove.
Yeah,
I got this.
everybody is.
And drink tea or whatever. Right.
Yep.
But at the same time, what I'm saying is, and maybe I got a little over the top, but we need to turn around at this point now and just say, like you were saying, no, we're not doing this anymore. Reach out to your elected officials, and just tell them, we're not following your BS rules. Kiss my ass. You guys are clowns. Piss off.
And yeah, thanks, Bill. One retort just before I move on to Ron. There are situations that you can do that, where EB says you have to do this, right? If you go to a hospital and your mom or dad is sick, and the hospital person says you have to wear a mask or you're not allowed to see your parent, now all of a sudden they've got power over you. You can't say no, because now it's a cost. You know what I mean? And it's those situations where we have to push it and say, like, absolutely fucking not. Excuse my French. And that's difficult. And then the other part of that is if you're a healthcare worker, right? And the edict is, this is just an easy example, but there are other examples. But the edict is, we're not going to hire healthcare workers who are unvaccinated. Well, that's faulty for multiple reasons. The vaccine doesn't work is one, but there are many, many more reasons why that's a faulty idea. And yet that's still being pushed by these, by this government that is compromised, by this, foreign influenced government. And so, like, I don't know how an occupied population, and I believe that Canada would qualify as an occupied population under a government that's not genuinely representing their interests, sending money to Ukraine, sending money for wars and foreign wars and all the rest. How can an occupied population push and move their rulers away from ignoring them, because they've been able to ignore us for a long time, more than 10 years, like more than 20 years even, right? So it's like now, just because we're real upset about it, well, like in 10 years, the kids who are coming up now will just be used to it, you know? And that's like, man, it drives me. It just drives me. Thanks, Bill. Ron?
Yeah, well, we were told 4 years ago, there was going to be no new normal. And so I think we're almost way behind the 8 ball, even how we're approaching it, because the plan is to destroy every institution. Mm-hmm. And we've seen documents through the World Economic Forum how they want to rebuild every institution. Mm-hmm. So
and they're in the midst of doing it.
Yeah, and it we've seen a lot of people go head to head with the system, and nobody seems to be able to even chop off one head of the Hydra.
You know what Trump said during the Rogan thing? I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I think I've watched about an hour and a half of it. One of the things that he said during the back and forth about being president and choosing which party, because he said, Rogan said, "You were a Democrat, right?" And he's like, "I was a Democrat to the mid '90s." And then was it Bloomberg? There was somebody who tried to make the Reform Party happen, and they dumped tons of money. And he didn't want to say their name. I think it was Bloomberg, but I could be wrong. So he said he was going to be a reform, and then he said he realized that he had to be inside the machine in order to change it. He couldn't change it from the outside, because even if a third party presidential candidate does a really good job, they still don't really have a shot in hell of winning. So in order to actually do anything, you have to do it from the inside of the system, right? And it just seems like that is the downfall too. Like in order to you can't affect change from outside the system. So in order to affect change, you have to make yourself become part of the system, and in doing so, you become part of the system. And so, like, part of the enemy, part of the bad guys, right? And so, like, unless Trump, and like remains to be seen, that's one of my difficulties on today's show, earlier show, is that the proof's in the pudding. You know what I mean? The proof is in what he did. What he did during the last term, no new wars. There were some benefits, but like Operation Warp Speed, COVID, like he did that too, right? So there's all sorts of like competing things with Trump, I think. And like part of it as well is he says that he's fighting this war, that I don't know that he says that he's fighting a war, but he says that he's fighting against the deep state, that he's going to drain the swamp, that he's going to do that he's going to do all of these very difficult things that couldn't be done without obfuscation, lies, misdirection, right? Like, and so like with that context as well, who knows, right? And so Polyev hasn't positioned himself that way. He positions himself as a part of the machine, and it seems like he's going to do the UN 2030 agenda, and we're all going to kind of go along with it. And like, just like the BC election, we're going to be like, no. And they're going to say, yeah. And we're going to be like, no. And that's it. Right. And so like,
yeah, he said you couldn't you wouldn't be able to get the House on your side as an independent. The argument made a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought
he made a lot of sense.
Yes. I thought it was a good argument. I thought he was right. Yeah. Like I wasn't saying that Trump was wrong. Sorry.
The whole coming out though with the no income tax on it was tips and something else, but
everything, no income tax. Do tariffs.
Yeah, well, he needs to come out and just say no income tax. But
he did.
That would settle him in as the greatest president ever.
We should do that in Canada. There's no reason why we couldn't do that in Canada. We should do that in Canada. We should demand it, for crying out loud. We should have a political party that stands up and says, you know what, Doug Ford, I'm going to end the Ministry of Education. The Board of Education is going to be ended, and the ministry is going to fix it and hand it over back to the parents. And we're going to end income tax, period, all in the province. And any taxes that are federal, we're going to put a tax agency in place to collect those federal taxes. And then the only way we remit them is if the federal government proves that they're not a foreign agent run by Chinese or other foreign assets. And when they do, we'll remit the taxes. And if they don't, it'll be refunded to the citizen every year or every month, maybe. How's that? Every month we'll do it. You have until the end of the month. Prove that you're not Chinese traders, and then we'll send your taxes. Until then, no, and it gets refunded to the citizen right away. So you pay your taxes one time in January, and I bet you don't pay your taxes again, because I'll refund it every single month until the federal government ponies it up. A-holes.
What does it cost to start a party like that?
Nothing, but we'll get nowhere. Like, that's the problem. Unless... Right? Like that was Trump's point. Like, if you're not part of the system, but then in Canada, you can point to Wild Rose, you can point to UCP, right? But I think that a party like that would be voted for. But then the person whoever's the leader of the party, or whoever's the face of the party, the Rustad, the Danielle Smith, the Higgs, the Ford, whoever it is, right, will be attacked, will be completely demonized, and called a Nazi, called whatever, everything, all of that stuff. And unless you know that going in, and unless you have a counter to that, and I think knowing that going in inoculates you. I think that it would be even funnier to name it the Far Right Party of Ontario. Like, and just be like, yes, that is exactly what we are. call us what we are. We're the far right party, and we're going to deport the invaders. We are going to make sure that the rule of law is followed in this damn country. Easy, right? Like, I think this is not hard, right? But like, the hard part is exposure. That's the hard part, and they won't let that happen. And then if they do that, they'll rust at you, right? So like we're watching happen right now. Thanks, Ron. MC?
Well, Mark, the stuff you just described there is like, even just education alone is not electable. It's such a giant radical change that most people will reject it because it's too much of a change, right? Everyone's used to sending their kids off for 8 hours a day for 10 months of the year and not having to do anything, right? That people love that because it takes all that responsibility off of their shoulders. Right. And then they complain.
So if they have terrible kids, they can blame the school.
Yeah. And they do. But they complain about how crappy the education system is, but almost none of them are withdrawing out of it. Right. And this is the same thing that goes back to, how do you get the middle masses on your side and stuff like that? Like, they only come on at their own speed. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
but you can incentivize.
Huh?
You could incentivize. Peter said you start with charter schools, and I've long said if each kid in Ontario anyway is worth about $13,000 a year, depending on if you have EAs attached or anything like that. And so if you said to, like, I understand what you're saying. I think radical change would be good. Like, I think that it would resonate. But I could be wrong.
Well, no, you're not wrong. But the thing is that people aren't going to vote for it, which is why you have to basically bring in a dictatorship to do the right thing.
I know.
Like,
that's what
you have to pull these people off of their social safety net, and you're not going to do it gradually because they'll always vote to bring more of it back.
Yes, they will. Yeah.
So what do? You can't let everyone vote.
So it's the Darth Vader problem. Like, yes, we need a dictator, and it needs to be me. Like, but right, like, I agree with you. See, and I've spent a lot of time thinking, and it's wasted time. Like, it's wasted time. I wish that I wouldn't think about things like. I wish that I learned money instead. Really, and I say this a lot. Maybe I should just stop thinking about these silly things and learn money. But I think about how to transition the school system to a system where people would be like. Their needs would be met, the kids' needs would be met, the parents' needs would be met, and it would be a better system overall to experience for the kids rather than like the system that we've got now, which is an indoctrination camp basically for lunatics. So
are your kids going to public school right now?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
you're part of the problem.
Yeah, man, because like you don't have unilateral control. And like we had that period, like you don't have unilateral control. It doesn't matter if you think you do.
You don't have unilateral control over your own family?
No, you don't. Because like society, you have to give your kids to the world. Like you have to give your kids to the broader, bigger world. And they have to be able to be armed and protected from the things that they're going to encounter. But like, if I want my kids to be homeschooled, then I have to make that happen. I made that happen during COVID. And then when schools came back, my kids wanted to go to school. And I had one vote in multiple, in situations where that was being discussed. And the kid also had one vote, right? The kid got to make a decision based on what they wanted. So it's not, I don't have, like I could have unilateral control and I could do something that's different. And I think that I have to in the coming years. I think that I'm going to have to change what's happening because what's happening is intolerable. But I was hoping that I could fix it through a political direction, right? But I don't have unilateral control of things like that for many reasons. And not because I'm just throwing my hands up and saying, I don't want to do that. If I did want to do that, there would be consequences that are not tolerable to me. And so I've got to find another path, right? And like there are ways to protect your kids from that kind of stuff. And I teach my kids the things that I want them to learn. But like, it frustrates me no end that the schools are as terrible as they are in indoctrinating and so good at indoctrinating kids into a cracked way of thinking. So yeah, I do spend a lot of time worrying about that problem. And I mean, there are a lot of people out there who see the problem. And again, like I said, like, and you may disagree with me and that's okay. But like from my point of view, I have to hand my kids over to the world because this is where we live and they have to learn to deal with it. And the better I can prepare them, the more I can prepare them, the better. Right. And so I don't have a good solution for without fixing, like without smashing the current system and like freeing a lot of people. I don't have a good solution for providing everything my kids need from a homeschooling perspective in my situation. And I'm not saying that homeschool is impossible. I'm not saying that, people in rural or, like me can't do it, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that. It's more complicated than that. But like, I do identify the problem. I do see it's a problem, but the solution is it's very difficult. Right?
I think it's a question of prioritization.
Could be.
Because like if you had a hierarchy of hazards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Public school is a pretty big hazard to your kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how much lower is it than leaving a loaded pistol laying on the coffee table, right? It depending on their training, I guess it could be much more dangerous or much less dangerous, right? Like it's so.
They're stealing the kids. They're stealing the kids from our culture. Like what they're accusing the native schools, the government, the Catholic schools of doing to the native kids, they're doing to their population of students now. They're refusing to teach them Canadian culture. They won't talk about Thanksgiving. They won't talk about Christmas. They'll talk about Sikh holidays. They'll talk about Muslim holidays. They'll talk about Chinese New Year and Diwali, but they won't talk about Christmas and they won't talk about Thanksgiving. And I've had a go around with multiple people and they get very cagey and they don't want to give you specifics. And they say, oh, we wish the kids, a happy holiday on Thanksgiving. And, we talked about it in school about what they're grateful for. And I'm like, that's not instructing the kids on what Thanksgiving is. That's not telling them what the reason it's celebrated and how it has to do with the harvest and all the rest. Like you didn't do your jobs. And then their retort is in grade 2, they talk about all sorts of holidays from all sorts of cultures and that's supposed to cover it. And I was like, what horseshit. I understand
yeah, but like, I don't know. There are some situations, right, where your kids don't get a vote because you're raising them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like get in the car right now. It's time to go, right? That's
their vote.
Small thing. It's just like go there and do that.
Yep.
And it seems like this relatively much more important situation, like then we can't do it without your input. Like I didn't have a choice when I was a kid. I had to go get on that bus every day.
That's true. Well, as I said, it's more complicated than that. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to, it's more complicated than that. So
yeah,
it's a very nuanced issue.
It's just a thing that I'm never going to do.
No, I hear you. And like, it's a good microcosm. Like I understand you're making good arguments, but my ability to solve that problem is I'm pursuing it. And that's right. Like honestly, and but that's where people who work in healthcare in BC are. Right. And that's where people who are being discriminated against by these communists are as well. Right. And it's like you're stuck between these situations where if you go in one direction, you're going to piss off one group of people, but it's going to be better. And if you go in another direction, it's going to piss off another group of people and it's going to be worse. Right. Like, and so like, and like sometimes life is messy and full of bullshit, right? Like, and there's no fixing it. Like you just have to survive through it, right? You can't go over it, can't go around it, got to go through it. And so like, shit, that's it. And like, yeah, it's terrible. I worked in schools for like 15 years. I worked in schools and it got ideologically worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it got unsafe. And as soon as there's like unsafe for the workers, like I was a worker in the school. I wasn't a teacher. I was a worker for children's mental health. Kids used to throw desks. Sorry, everybody, you've got your hands up and I'm just talking here. But kids used to throw desks. Kids used to be aggressive. Kids used to spit. I've been spit at like kids have spit in my face. You're not allowed to hit them, obviously, because like these kids are mentally having trouble. And the whole thing is they're there for behaviors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But those kids being in Gen Pop classrooms, I'm a grown adult who understands that this person needs help. I need to be compassionate and professional and everything to make sure that this is dealt with correctly. But like when there's just regular kids in there and they're getting their education impacted negatively because of a violent kid who's being forced in there because of the bleeding hearts nonsense, that's terrible. So like I left because of that, because they were putting kids in bad situations and blaming the adults who were trying to fix it, trying to protect the kids. The response, what you're supposed to do as a professional in that situation, when one kid goes off and there's 29 kids in the classroom, you don't remove that one kid, you remove those 29. You take all of those kids out and you wait until that kid stops, and you don't do anything. You just wait until they stop. Isn't that crazy? I was like, no, not happening here, because I'm not doing that. And so in my class, that didn't happen. And then I left because I was like, mm-mm. So anyway, thank you, MC. I'm sorry that I can't, I mean, like, it's a good microcosm. But thank you, MC. We're going to move on. Scott.
I'll try to be quick because this was 15 minutes ago. You were talking
Sorry.
about taking over the machine. I call it the machine.
Mm-hmm.
You can call it the cathedral, the organizational system. I call it the machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way that we're organized our societies and run it. You speak about taking it over. This has been a long time problem. Anybody remember the name Sigisbert, Dagobert? No? The Holy Roman Empire? The Holy Roman Empire invited, I forget whether it was Dagobert or Sigisbert, down to assume the throne of Charlemagne, right? Because the Gauls had beat the Holy Roman Empire. Once he got there, and
Gaul was France. I just want to make sure people are right. Gaul was mostly France, like the landmass that's now France.
Europe, yeah.
That was Gaul.
Europe.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just carried on.
The Holy Roman Empire, Charlemagne lost against the Europeans, and so they invited them down, the king down, and the first thing that they did was the ruler, the religious dude, I think it was a pope, ran out and gave him the crown and said, "I such and such decree you king of the Holy Roman Empire." And he turned around and he said, "If I had known you were going to do that, I wouldn't have came," because he understood that they became the king makers, that the machine then took over whatever happened within it. And so you talk about restructuring it by going inside of it, and they're going to find out, look what happened to Kennedy, if we're correct in this, and look what happened to Kennedy. So perhaps a charismatic, and I'll try to not burn everybody's clock, so perhaps a charismatic leader could go in and turn things about because he had enough supporters inside the machine and the will of the populous people, right?
Yeah.
But these conditions, when have they happened? About the school board, and again, and it just is just like what I'm talking about, the organizational machine. Mm-hmm. The people in it, it's an industry. They have been trained in this. They're not going to want to retrain or to lose what they have. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to capitalize on this. These are what you're against. It's great to plan what happens after the victory, but not enough people in their campaign spend enough time considering what to do with their enemy, right? We keep thinking that the system is going to give us what we want. But like I said, you've got all these little points of opposition that are going to try to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the time.
Yeah. So, well, the little bits, education, that'll try and protect itself. You know, anybody trying to stop what's happening in schools will be called somebody who's trying to take education away from kids. Anybody who's trying to stop what's happening in hospitals will say you're making patients less safe because you're taking away these checks and balances and all the rest of it. And so like the system, yeah. And so exactly what you're saying, that system will take you in. And unless you have an idea of like, exactly how you're going to wield it. And I mean, like a good example, and I mean, like, I don't mean to give Polyev props or anything like that, but like the Conservative Party under Andrew Scheer and the Conservative Party under O'Toole, you could tell that was machine driven. You could tell those guys were empty suits. They were doing what they were told, right? Like they were just like some guys in other suits would walk into the room and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. We need your approval, sign here. And they'd sign. Polyev is doing something different. He's setting the tone in very different ways across the board. Like the MPs are allowed to do videos and they seem to be allowed to speak on certain topics about what they're going to do. Shadow ministers can talk about their files, and Polyev
also has a personality.
He does have a personality. Apparently Andrew Scheer had a personality too, which is coming out more now, but he was just like O'Toole, like very dour and just like not saying much. But it's the system. And I think that we watch the system take those two and just give us the puppet leaders that people expect, right? And Polyev may be a little different, but I still fear that he's that puppet. That's that same puppet leader. I don't hear the same rhetoric from him that I hear from Trump. Like he's talking about, we've got to deal with climate change and using technology, and we've got to, axe the tax, build the homes, all this stuff. And it doesn't. Trump has at least a little bit more fleshed out policy ideas specific to draining the swamp, if you will, whereas Polyev is lots of sloganizing, etc. Anyway, regardless, thank you. Oh, I can't remember who was talking. Scott. Bill, you're muted.
There we go.
Yep.
Hit the wrong button. Yeah, well, on education for a split second, having been in post-secondary for a while and seeing the parasitic self-defense mechanisms of the unionized communists working within those systems, it's the same thing as both pre-kindergarten all the way through post-secondary. But what we did, and to a certain degree, like our kid ended up going into a public high school because he was making the choice at that point. But we sent him to a Catholic school, 1 through 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever it was, 1 through 9. And he, again, it was good. And the parents in this board had control. Like my wife and a bunch of other mothers went down and raised hell a few times, and man, they got results. The public system being far more unionized, same as our healthcare, same as everything else. Like if it was up to me, and even on our healthcare system, I'll go there for a split second, and I intend on phoning the Premier's office Monday and that, mentioning that the whole board should be dissolved and should be voluntary. So you might get your lunch paid for or whatever, and then even that's going to be a buffet from whoever's, right?
Yep.
Everything else is free. Why should somebody be making $1 million a bloody year telling me that I got to wear a mask when they know in the back of their own minds that it doesn't work?
Yep. Well, yeah. And again, we're stuck by the system in the same situation, right? Because the principal is bound by the board, and the board is bound by the public health, and the public health is bound by the ridiculous crap that the politicians spout.
But if we have a leader that is willing to, again, like Trump, like I firmly believe that Trump's surrounding himself like guys, Robert Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, a few of these other people that Elon Musk. I mean, I'm not really digging his EI stuff or his AI stuff. I
Neuralink.
I take a hard turn back on all of that. Paper ballots. Daniel Smith saying paper ballots. That's it. Mm-hmm. We need more people.
So that would resonate. You could have an Ontario party that said we're the far right Ontario party, and we'll do paper ballots only, and we'll deport the illegals.
1 day vote counts. 1 day vote counts.
One day.
Can tell me that you need more than 1 day to count votes.
That's right. 1 day paper ballots.
Been in the room. Yep. Like I've scrutineered and stuff. No, you can count them in 1 day.
Yes, you can. Yes, you sure can. Thanks, Bill. Yep. Ryan.
I just wanted to go back to the education and like homeschooling. I know a family, they're trying to homeschool their kids. It's very difficult because while the one parent is working at home, which is good, but both parents have to work, and no matter what. And the thing is too, they realize that their kids have to go into the government system anyways for work. Like if they want to take a trade or anything like that, they have to have government documentation say that they have 4 years of carpentry or electricity or whatever. Yep. And so the system decades ago started that because they probably knew that they needed to take control of what the children that are growing up at this time. And so I agree with you. Like you have to put your kids through schooling. You really have no choice.
But I think we can make schooling better.
and we can make schooling better. Yes,
I think we can.
But that's the thing is, well, and going back to that is we cannot comply with their system, and we have to you got to start stop complying with their banks, their money, their everything that they've done.
Yeah, no,
we got to go back to the 1900s where we didn't have to have a driver's license, a passport. You don't have to get your H2S ticket.
I mean, if you know the right people and you just got to the country, you can get your driver's license, especially for a big truck, in a couple hours like that.
Yes. Yeah.
No,
it's all these things are just control. Like I worked in the oil patch a long time, and every 3 years you got to go get your tickets. You got to get your tickets.
Have you heard about the McDonald's ice cream machine scandal? Do you know what this ice cream machine scandal is? It's the same as the ticket scandal. Just in case I forget and get lost, remind me. The ice cream scandal is the same as the ticket scandal, like getting your ticket every 3 years. So I'm going to assume you don't know the ice cream scandal. So McDonald's Corporation, if you're a franchise, so you bought a McDonald's and you can sell McDonald's food, you have to use this specific ice cream machine. And the specific ice cream machine has software that would break it periodically. Like it wouldn't actually be broken, but the software would break it, right? And the reason the software would break it regularly was because the only way to repair it is to call in this repair company that McDonald's tells you have to call in, right? And so it was a scam to take franchisees for more money. You see what's going on? Like that's exactly what it is. And it's the same thing. And so McDonald's lost a lawsuit because they had to admit that what it ended up exposing it was an industrious franchise owner figured out the code, created an app to do exactly the same repair, was able to repair these machines with the app, started selling the app. McDonald's was like, or the company that McDonald's was repping, took them to court. And they lost, like McDonald's lost. So they do that specifically as a juicer. Like we need to make money. We're not making enough money on the bottom line here. And we should make money. Where's a new revenue stream? Well, let's make it every 3 years instead of every 5. Let's make it every 2 years instead of every 6. Right.
Yeah.
And then juice. That's like 3 times as much. Right. So
yes.
Cash money, the system, money is actually part of the system too. Like you're talking about fiat money, but I think like money, the way we consider it. But on the other side, like if we get rid of that system, like there are parts of our system that I really like. I like chocolate cereal. I like being able to get on an airplane and going down to like Jamaica or like, a southern place and doing stuff like that. I like going on vacation. You know what I mean? Like there are elements of our system that I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. There are elements of our system that are like awful and terrible as well. And I think like it needs to be smashed into a million pieces and destroyed. But then I think, but what about all those other cool things about our system that I like?
Right. What if you were able to make your own chocolate cereal? Somebody taught you.
This is
and then you can make your own chocolate cereal.
Now
you don't have to worry about.
Now you're talking about utopia, man. If I had my own chocolate cereal thing, my whole show would stop. My whole life would be solved. That would be all I need is a chocolate cereal factory. That's it. What is my purpose in life? Chocolate cereal. Thanks, Ryan. Steve. You're okay. Good.
Yeah, you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, getting back to the education thing, I won't take up a bunch of time, but like ask yourself the question, like, do you see those, 70s bicycle gangs riding around anymore? See even kids wearing helmets? Do you see them wanting to get a driver's license before they're like 26, 27, like I've experienced?
Yeah.
Like it's just fascinates me. I mean, I had a beautiful 1989 4Runner ready to go, and it sat in the driveway for 3 years because I bought a Ram truck because I'm a tradesman. I needed a truck, and eventually I just gave it away.
Wow, that's crazy.
Like, and these things do happen quite often, and it goes back to the education indoctrination where you don't need those things because you're going to be the next CEO of Google, or you're going to have you're going to be
the next Messi, Ronaldo.
You're going to be a no friendo star, or like it's just plugged in so hard, it's jammed so hard. I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
It's wild.
On that note, I've said before that I think that like puberty they're trying to stop puberty with puberty blockers and saying like men can be women and all the other stuff. Puberty is an important thing to go through as a human because like it takes you from being a child to being like an adolescent, right?
It's the healthiest thing you can do on earth, man.
I think having children is a second puberty. I think having kids is a litmus test, but not really. It's not a litmus test. It's supposed to happen. Like even if you go back
preaching to the choir, Mark. I was a Canadian outdoor leadership training
Yeah.
guide. I taught kids how to play outside for years and years.
But when you have kids of your
mountaineering.
your own, so like introducing the birth control pill and then creating a situation where we say to young girls in rite of passage, says Peter, we're creating a situation where we say to young girls, listen, you better have a full-time job, you better have a husband nailed down, couple of years under your belt.
Streaming. They call that streaming. Okay. They call that. What they've done is they've cut the branches to the tree and left only the top 30 branches. Okay.
Percent.
You are just bark until we decide that you're allowed to grow leaves.
Right. Exactly.
Understood?
But the reality of the situation is physically, and like women are ready to have babies earlier than they have babies generally now. Like if you go back to the 1960s, women who were 17, 18, 19 were having babies. And like that was the majority of the babies. And then like it changed to like 26, 27, 28. And now it's being pushed even further, 28, 29, 30. But like,
the top end demographic is stupid, right?
The earlier you have babies, the earlier the couple has a baby. It's not just the woman, it's the couple that has the baby.
Of course.
Then that triggers the second puberty. That triggers you need to like smarten up. You need to, get a job. And then like after you've got one baby, well, I mean, you might as well have a second. It's going to happen. You know what I mean? Right?
Direction in life, right? That's where
also
you're going.
the children were healthier.
Children were healthier.
Earlier conception leads to healthier offspring.
Yes. Yeah. From everybody, like the sperm
and better
and
parenting,
eggs.
and better energy, better
younger
correlation with the child, like everything.
Younger grandparents.
I agree. Yeah. Anyway, that I just wanted to stem that topic just to see where it went, and that's my good. I just want to hear everybody else.
Cheers, man. Thank you. MC. Thanks, Steve. MC.
Yeah, well, what you were saying about the ice cream machine kind of reminds me of like now some of the coffee machines at the gas stations now, some of them are like a computer and you got to go push and then, and I'm telling the person like coffee doesn't need a freaking computer. It just needs a pot to sit in.
Yep.
And like, until I get there.
Yeah, it's no problem.
And then you're like, well, this is French. And like, is anyone going to notice? Is anyone going to notice like, oh, this coffee's been sitting in this pot for 2 hours? Like, unless it gets cold, then you're going to throw it away, right? I'm going to say it's cold. Give me more coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll wait while you make some.
Yeah.
But that's one thing. And the other thing, you were talking about puberty and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people, well, teenagers that are going through puberty, right? Become self-conscious, because I remember when I was a kid, you'd always hear this question, oh, what are you going to do when you grow up? Like you're 16 now, you only have 2 years to decide what the entire rest of your life is going to be. Like, shut up, everyone.
I nailed it.
And don't, whatever you do, don't go straight from high school to frickin' university, you idiots. Like, go do something. Go figure out, go learn something about yourself, because you don't know anything right now. And you won't know anything until you're like at least 20, probably.
Yeah,
in 95% of cases.
And you know the reason that they won't know anything until they're 20, like the actual practical reason that they won't know anything until they're 20 in our current society is because all of the education stuff is meant to be fake. It's not meant to be real. There's no real consequences. You might fail the class and you might feel bad about failing class. It might cost some money. But when you get out into the real world and you actually have to produce something, then you've got experience. Then you can say, well, when I did this, blah, 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 blah happened. And I learned this lesson. So we shouldn't do that. Now you know something, right? Not like, I read this in school. It's like, shut up, you idiot. You don't know a damn thing yet, right? You haven't done it. You haven't done it. And when you have done it, mention it because you might be helpful. But like, until then, shut up. Like, you shut up.
And another part of the problem is that you just went through puberty. So like, of course, like you just changed.
Yeah. Like a lot.
How are you supposed to know what the hell you changed into already?
Yeah.
And like, and you're right though. Like there's a big thing about like, knowing that like, I need this $800 so I can live indoors this month.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
that's an important thing for people to have to grasp that might be difficult.
That they
if
don't get
just-
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like when I say, if you haven't done it, shut up. I'm not necessarily trying to denigrate people who have worked hard and done like incredible things through high school or anything like that. But I'm saying, like, if you're down to your last, well, I mean, on one side, if you're driving home and you're down to your last $5 in your pocket until payday, which is like a week away, and you don't have any gas and you're not even sure the gas that you've got in your car is going to make it home, and you have to make that choice, and you're like, well, I don't know which one I should do. Like, should I save the $5 to eat, or should I put $5 into the gas tank to get home? Not sure. That experience is something that's going to teach you. Or if you put something together and like you're successful with it, or even, you know, not successful, if you put something together and try, that experience is going to teach you something much more than a fake project or a fake thing that didn't actually happen. Even The Apprentice, like they actually had to go out and do the thing, right? You can't actually fake it. And there's so many things out there that encourage this book learned, fake, false kind of, like the internet's false, right? But people who actually do things and bring their experiences to share, those are successful. People who bring fake experiences and nonsense to the internet, not successful, right? Like there's a difference, and people can discern it really quick.
On the other hand, though, going back a little bit, the people that do amazing things in high school and stuff are pretty nerdy. Like,
yeah.
You got to make fun of them a little bit,
For sure.
I think.
Ha ha. Thanks, MC. Ron?
MC was talking about the coffee maker. Our coffee maker last year was down for 3 weeks because it couldn't connect to the network.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ha.
So
everybody turn it off and turn it back on. Like, no, coffee's not working again this morning.
We tried everything. But we needed a technician to show up. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet the technician did the
MAC address.
Oh my gosh! Did he just connect with it via Bluetooth? Like, I would have loved to be in the room when it was fixed, because I have a feeling that he came in and was like, "Oh yeah, I know," bloop 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 bloop, and then just stood there for a second, and then he was like, "Okay, your coffee's ready to go," and you're like, "Mother, like that's it? Like you couldn't have done that remotely?"
Yeah, and the kids complain about it. It's like an insta grind. It takes like,
oh my gosh,
25 seconds for a cup of fresh ground coffee, and the kids say it takes too long.
My goodness, I wish that I liked coffee. I don't like coffee. But I wish I had a teacher or an adult when I was a young kid. He was a teacher, principal, I guess, or maybe not. And he yelled at me. And every time he yelled at me, he had like this coffee breath. And I promised myself, the only thing I remember about him yelling at me was I remember thinking, if I ever work with kids, I'm not going to have this terrible breath that this guy's got. Like, oh my gosh, it was awful. And I like to think that I succeeded in that. So I chewed gum and I only drank tea to this day. I don't drink coffee. I like the idea of coffee and I like the smell of coffee, but I don't like drinking coffee.
I put it up there with top 5 addictions that people don't think they have.
Yeah. I have a different ritual to start my day. Oh well. Thanks. Moving on, Bill. Thanks, Ron.
Yes. Coffee machines. You guys need to get some friends that are electricians with instrumentation backgrounds. Oh, coffee! I'll tell you what, man. I make my own coffee at home. I haven't bought a coffee in years. Take a thermos. Remember those?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you grind? Do you have a coffee machine with a grinder, and do you get like the beans?
Yes, but we're too lazy to do that. So I like Mickey D's. So does the wife. So we just pick up the Mickey D's coffee in bulk, and then just.
Oh, okay. Use that.
It's always fresh, because after 20 minutes, I throw mine out.
Yep.
I don't like stale coffee.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, but being back to the coffee machines, as long as you have an electrician buddy who's got a little bit of an instrumentation or a millwrighting type background, you can bypass any of that BS.
Interesting.
Oh yeah,
it makes sense.
Output, right? You can take that out of the loop, and now you just switch, and on goes the coffee, and then you bet, and that's that, right?
Yep.
Or just get an old-fashioned coffee machine, like Ryan was pointing out there, and that's even better coffee, like the old grannies used to make. Remember when you were a kid and skating outside? You had your hot chocolate, and then the parents had the big coffee pot sort of thing, and the old grannies were there, and they were making like good coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So when you got to be a bit older, then you could have some of that coffee instead of the hot chocolate, because
or half and half.
Dad was.
It's my old percolator, and I can take it wherever I want. I can start a fire too. Put it on there.
I know, right? How many people can do that? Like I gave my kid fire starting stuff, all sorts of stuff. I don't know if he threw it out or not. Probably not. He probably just put it away in a drawer. But yeah,
and it tastes great.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste like plastic.
well, that's the other side of all of this stuff too. It's like going outside and having cowboy coffee when you're 40 miles back in the bush and not a soul to be around. And I'll tell you what, like I quit smoking decades ago. The only time that I really, really miss a good smoke is
morning
when
coffee.
somebody actually has a smoke and they light it off an ember on a campfire sort of thing. Then it's kind of like, man, I miss those. But they're so full of carcinogens now. Not like when I was a kid. I hate to evoke John Mellencamp, that sack of communist crap.
For real.
But a smoke was a smoke. When I was a kid, it was way different. That's why we smoked when we were kids, not to look cool. It was because they were good.
They were good. They tasted delicious. No, I think that I have a theory, because right now marijuana is just the plant, right? And there are people who smoke marijuana regularly and they don't have any lung issues. And I think that if you just smoke tobacco, just the plant, none of the formaldehyde and all the rest of the crap that they put in there for preservation and stuff, you'd be just fine. You'd be fine. And the other thing I heard was that they destroyed tobacco through they created this cancer connection for tobacco to change the crop, because the tobacco used to be a cash crop of the United States, right? Like people would just grow fields and fields of tobacco and people would smoke the crap out of it. And the powers that be, the deep state or whatever, didn't like that. So they wanted to give a reason to stop the tobacco from allowing that to be, or not allowing it, but not to make it as lucrative. And they wanted to change it over to, I think it was corn, right? And they did. So all
corn
through
to ethanol, and then that
soy.
collapse. Remember that worked out a few years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got like 10 minutes left. There's like a whole list of things that we didn't talk about. The liberal coup that failed. That was pretty funny. I want to say, like, do you guys think, so this time next week is the 5th? Is it the 5th? No, not quite.
Isn't it like
the 3rd?
Well, this time next week is the 3rd of November.
The 3rd of November, yeah. So the 5th, it will be 2 days.
That it wasn't the 5th of November, right?
That's the election day. So remember.
Basement someplace, right?
Huh?
5th of November, Guy Fawkes Day.
Yeah, Guy Fawkes. Yeah, remember. But this year is. Do you think that Trump's going to win? Oh, sorry, Scott. Scott, you've got your hand up before we go into Trump. Scott, what do you think?
Why are teenagers jerks?
Because they're trying new things.
Why are we all such idiots before we have a certain amount of carbuncles and that?
No, we're
brought up earlier. So here's the deal, right? And
I think we're still idiots.
Go out and work for a year before you go into college or university. So we live in two realities. We live in the theoretical, the theoretical reality where we plan things, and we live in the physical reality. So while we plan things, they're based again on personal experience, right? On our experience of the physical world. So when you have no experience of the physical world, what do you draw on to make your planning?
Books and things.
So it's not just the hormonal imbalance, the shake and bake of your body finishing off that cascade of hormones to grow you. It's also that your decision making on no real life experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, it's a good point. And I mean, a lot of the experience.
And listen, don't be slamming the AI barista. They have rights too.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, no, the decision making, there's like a whole industry around that. Teachers are supposed to be like helping kids, make those decisions and navigate those things. And they're supposed to be experts and stuff. And like, I trust them less and less. Right. But even the system that the kids are going into, it's like the fictional job of police officer isn't really what you're doing as a police officer. You know what I mean? Like walking the beat is a lot of reports. You're writing a lot of reports, right? Driving in a cruiser, you're writing a lot of reports. You have to go to the end of your shift and write a lot of reports. Like there's a lot of things that are it's not exactly what it seems, and I mean, like 15 years ago, 25 years ago, if you were going to be a mechanic, you didn't really have to know much about computers, right? And now it's a whole different thing. Like you have to be able to read codes and like put it into the computer, and you have to be able to discern what's a mechanical problem versus a computer problem and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Well, that's the same for like a field like engineering. I know a buddy who's going to university here in Halifax for engineering, and he has like 2 or 3 different coding classes.
Yeah.
Even though like he might not even use it in his field, it's wild.
Right. Well, there's a language used in robotics that hasn't even been updated
Yeah.
since like 1980, and like it's ridiculous. My buddy knows the language, and he works in robotics, and he was telling me about it. He's like, "Oh wow, it'll take you like 3 weeks to learn the language, but anywhere you work, it'll be $100,000 job." And I was like, "Really?" And it's like AO or something like that, IO.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, it just controls computers it controls robots and robotics programming on factory floors." And he's like, "And we can't find anybody to do it." And I was like, "Wow, this is so crazy." But yeah.
Try being an electrician, right? The stuff they jam you with today, holy.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, so like when I went into my field, when I started working, I worked for group homes and things like that. And so like, it's not that it seemed like work, but like you knew what you were doing. Like when you walk into a fast food store, like a Taco Bell, you don't really know what to do, but it's like there's dishes to do, and you can get fries or something like that if you're an idiot, right? And so like, but when you get to like higher levels of employment, what you're doing is so specialized and like weird that you can't be prepped for it, but you'd be better served to be able to like to be able to set your environment the way you want. You know what I mean? Like you walk in and you're like, well, this is what I need to do my job. But a lot of people walk in and they get told, well, here's your computer and here's your logins and here's how to do it and blah, 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 blah. And they're not making decisions. They're just being dragged along. You know what I mean? And like, they're not doing the policing job or anything like that. They're just doing these reports and these things that, like, when you think about what am I going to do for the rest of my life, and you're like, I'm going to be a police officer, and you think helping people and taking cats out of trees and whatever, but the reality is you're just writing reports and driving around in a cruiser, and that's weird. And people don't have any experience with like what a real job looks like. They have this idea in their head of what a real job looks like, and
that's right.
When those two things. Yeah,
mine was so specialized.
It's so specialized.
Like take National Defense Headquarters building filter rooms for secret squirrels, right? Like not anybody off the block just walks in and gets that gig. Like it got so intense that like people following you around with guns and MPs all day and closed doors and all that kind of thing. Like to me, that was really stressful. I did a couple of years of that, and I thought this was the coolest gig, but really it wasn't. It was actually scary.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, without that experience of like, I went to I worked in schools, PD days. I showed up at the school for my first PD day at a high school, and like the team that I was supposed to be kind of with, they're like, okay, well, we're going out for breakfast. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So we went out for breakfast, and then there was a team meeting or something like that at 1:00, and then an all staff meeting at 2:00. And then when the all staff meeting's done, that's the end of the day. And I expected that to align with like usually the end of the day is like when I go home at the end of the day, right? And then so the meeting ended early, and so like we started the day and we went out for breakfast. We didn't get back till like 11:30 or something like that. Then we had like planning time, and then we had that 1:00 meeting, the team meeting, and 1:00 meeting was like a game, right? And then the 2:00 meeting was the principal talking for a little while, and then okay, that's it. Like, see you guys later. And then me and my team went back to the spec ed room, and people were like, "Have a good one, yo." And I was like, this job's easy. Like, this is great, right? Like, what do you mean? So yeah, it's weird, right? Like it's super duper weird. But when you start in a situation where you're doing all the grunt work and all the crap and all this ridiculous stuff, right? You're running and you're doing all sorts of busy work that really does need to be done, but it's not as important as it seems. And then when you get up into the high levels, you're just wasting a crap ton of time. And I was like, this is seriously all we do? People would sit in staff rooms and bitch about kids. And I was like, if this is your idea of a good time at school, you should get a different job, because you seem to hate children. Like, you hate them. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm sorry. I'm talking for a long time here. Sorry, Max. Go ahead. Oh, no. Okay.
No, that's just wild. That's all. Sorry.
Oh, it's crazy. No, it's crazy stuff, man. I tore a strip off of two teachers one teacher came in after recess and she was frustrated about a kid, and she had been, I guess, talking about this kid because I didn't know who she was talking about because she didn't say the kid's name, but the person she was talking to, I guess they had like a pet name for this kid, like, oh, you'll never guess, blah, blah, blah. And they went off on this kid for a good 5 minutes, and they didn't know who the hell I was. I was sitting in the room and I was working on my computer, and I had a login. I guess they thought I was some teacher or something like that, but they were tearing this kid apart. And like, I got uncomfortable to the point where I was like, this is effed up. And I went to the principal to tell on these teachers. I was like, I don't know if they're teachers or what, because it was in an elementary school, and it was like the first 2 or 3 times I'd been there as the youth care worker that I worked at. Anyway, they were talking about how much they hate this kid, and I tore strip off the woman. I was like, you should not be a teacher or a classroom supervisor or whatever the hell you are if this is how you feel about kids, because everything you just said, you wouldn't say in front of their parents. You wouldn't say in front of like anybody who cared about them. Like, what is wrong? I was like, what is wrong with you? And then I said, I actually don't care. I'm just going to go tell the principal now. And wow, like, and they got in trouble, I guess. But like, it's not, I'm not a tattletale as such. Like, I'm not the person that does that all the time, but like, these are kids. Like, these kids do not
But like,
deserve.
there's a limit.
Yeah, these are kids. These kids don't deserve to have teachers bullying them. Like, holy shit, right? Like, oh my gosh, it's wild. It's wild. So the world is a confusing place sometimes. MC, and then it's 2:00, and then I guess we're gonna kill it.
Well, shouldn't be a teacher. That's interesting. Probably by now doesn't want to be a teacher and realize that they don't want to be a teacher. I've definitely had some teachers that, like the NDP and Liberals, right, were holding out for their pensions.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And you tell them, right? And she probably knows, yeah, I shouldn't be a teacher, but I've moved up 3 levels in the pay grid.
Yep.
So I'm going to stick around.
And
I'm going back.
At that level in the pay grid, you don't really have to do all that much.
There you go.
Right.
And going back to mechanics, it seems to me that the length of time they spend educating a mechanic has not increased as they have transitioned from knowing about being a mechanic to knowing how to run a diagnostic computer.
Yep.
And right. And like I had an old Land Rover about 20 years ago. And even back then, it was an old Land Rover with a Chev engine in it. And because it was 2 different things, Canadian Tire would not service it.
Really?
Right? Because like, this is outside our scope. We're like, even then they weren't mechanics, they were diagnostic computer technicians, right?
Yes. Yep.
And now, like, you see at a car show, they'll have the students from NATE or SATE or, our technical school, and they put this engine together and make it start. And that's like a competition that they have, right?
Yep.
But that's like an oddity now. That like they do that one thing in their class at school, and then they go to the dealership and they learn how to use the diagnostic computer. And after that, all they know is the Dodge codes and how those codes apply to Dodge cars and stuff like that. It's like mechanicking, unless if you get hired at the right place, you become a professional mechanic, right? Who can do that stuff.
Who can take a problem and free will a solution. So here's a quick story. When I was working in the high schools, the student that I was attached to took an auto shop class. And so my job was to accompany him to class. So we went to class. And so I become like a floating teacher's aide, basically, so as not to embarrass the child that I'm attached to. So, but we ended up getting grouped off. Everybody got grouped off into groups of 2 or 3 to rebuild an engine. I've never rebuilt an engine before, right? I was like, this is going to be crazy, right? Like, I get to rebuild this engine. But those kids, honestly, genuinely, there was a group of 3 girls who were in the auto shop class. I don't know that they wanted to be in the auto shop class. They were like girls who were preoccupied with their looks and not auto shop. I don't know if they were in the auto shop class to like, because a boyfriend was there.
That's where the boys are.
Yeah, maybe. Like, but they weren't even flirty with it. And the guys that were in there were like, what are you girls? Like, they were
broads.
Energy. But they were pretty enough for the boys to not want to look at them. You know what I mean? Like, they were pretty enough for the boys to be like, right? Like, there's pretty girls in here. What do we do? And so the 3 girls,
for alpha males to fix their stuff.
I guess so. But they did a great job. Like, they put their stuff back together. And then my group had our stuff, and then the girls ended up helping like our group fix some problems, because I was like, can I help them? And the teacher was like, to a point, but like let them fail if they're going to fail, and then let them try and figure it out. And then I thought it was a good use of time to let the girls and my group work together. And I was like, see that's how you do it, boys. But regardless, right? It was fun. And like the girls did a great job. And then my group figured out what they did wrong, and they were able to like take it apart, fix it, and put it back together. And I was like, this is so cool. And then I couldn't do it now. But it was a neat thing. That's something that's really gives you experience, right? And like really teaches you. And like some of the shop teachers and some of the tech teachers, those guys are the best teachers, and gals are the best teachers I've met by and large. The people who are right out of teachers college and like the young ones, something's missing. They don't know their bum from a tea kettle. It's crazy. I don't think that's a real thing. Okay. Thanks, MC. Ryan, and then we're done.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the mainstream media, they're losing out on a lot of money and a lot of clients. So I think Trump's going to win.
I think Trump's going to win too. The mainstream media, yes. So like they're missing out on money, but the promise is the government will give you money like you've never dreamed of if you help us win, right? And Harris has got to get in, and then they'll give way more money than we could give. Of course, they won't be able to buy anything with it, but they'll have trillions. Right? Like,
yes. Trump stories are way better.
They're way more fun. They're definitely more interesting. I don't know. Yeah. I hope that Trump doesn't come, within a year saying, we've really got to get a draft going. Like, I hope that's not what happens.
Yeah.
Yaza. Ron asks, will Trump accept Canadian asylum seekers? My advice is to get there before Trump gets in office. No, not really. He'd probably deport us. I think he'd deport us. And I wouldn't blame him. I'd be like, you're right, sir. I'm sorry.
Putin will accept.
If he brought something to the table, he'd keep.
Yeah.
Like he's all for growing the economy and having people that are nationalistic.
Yeah.
Right?
I just think that if you wanted to like work in the United States, if the first thing you do is break in under Biden, that's probably like a bad first step.
Oh yeah, you'd be punted for sure.
Yeah. I think that Trump would be like, so you want to work here? Yes. Step 1, break the laws of the country. You sure you want to work here? Wrong move, bucko.
That raises a question. Do white illegal immigrants to the United States get those debit cards and stuff like that? Like
are we going to the southern border? Let's do it. We could take a bus to Mexico and then we'll come back. I'd be like, no habla español or no habla English. Hey?
Yeah. Yes. Hitchhike down or take a one-way plane to Mexico, and when you're ready to come home, you just go to the border and tell them you've been instructed to go to Great Falls.
Yeah.
And then
this is all I've got. I don't know. It's just a letter. It says Guelph. Do you know where that is? I don't know. I don't think I did see there was a migrant who walked into a hotel in New York and he got a free plane ticket and a free room. Did you guys see that video? There's a video on Twitter with it was James O'Keefe, and he had an undercover migrant guy. He wasn't actually undercover, but he pretended to be a migrant, and he went and he got a free ticket and then a free hotel room. And I was like, wow, it's that easy.
That's wild.
Yeah. So there's a.
Have you guys? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
on, Mark. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
I was just curious. Have you guys seen like the implosion of Tim Pool, like this past week?
The trolls finally got to him, and he was like, "Listen, my biological clock is ticking, and I've got to have a baby now."
And he laid off all of his staff.
Yep. Yeah, I heard the quarterings picking them up. But he said, like, he made the announcement. I thought it was pretty genuine. He's got his chickens, man.
Yeah, he has got his skate park.
Yeah, like he's got his YouTube money sorted, right? Like he's done. And I mean, not that I don't blame him.
You're talking Tim Pool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't blame him. Like,
oh, wow.
the most important thing you can do. Like Karen from accounting is not going to be there holding your hand on your deathbed. Nobody else is going to do that. If your mom and dad are around, great. But like, you want family that cares about you because they care about you, right? Like, and like, about what you built, right? About what you did together, right? Like, it's like, that's important. And so like the most important thing you can do is have kids, I think, build a family. Right?
You and your emotions.
I know, right? Damn me and my soft underbelly. All right. Well, that's a good place to leave it. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks everybody for watching, and we will catch you next time.